Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we're talking about a ship that was murdered in development by Wargaming and then shot for good measure sometime later with the Commander rework. That is, of course, the Tier 9 German Supercruiser, the Agir. Now, quite a few of you guys ask me quite often about the Agir. Is she worth it? This, that, and the other. Today I'm going to be answering that for you guys by taking a look back at the Agir, and we're going to look at her upon release. Then we're going to look at her in today's World of Warships and look at how she's managed to age over time. So, the Agir. What is the Agir? The Agir is a Tier 9 German supercruiser that is based on the O-class cruisers, or battle cruisers, whatever you want to call them. And she is essentially what the O-class was supposed to be, but she was launched alongside of her sister, the Siegfried, which was, I think, more along the lines of the P-class, but it really is kind of an O-class with 15-inch guns instead. So, yeah, but we're going to be talking about the Agir today. I'll be referencing the Siegfried a bit. I've put out several videos on the Siegfried and how I'm very upset with the changes made to her with the Commander rework, but that's another video for another time. Anyway, the Agir, she has 9 305mm guns, which are pretty standard for supercruisers. Most supercruisers have either 305s or 310s, and that falls right in line with them. Now, with the build that I'm running, she has a 17.5 second reload time because I run the reload module on this ship, and she has a maximum dispersion at 18.5 kilometers of 189 meters and 2.05 sigma. Now, what is good about the the Agir is her AP. The AP, with, again, the build that I have on her, because I have heavy AP, she has a maximum damage of 9,555, which is quite good. Couple that with a 17.6 second reload time, that's pretty decent DPM, but definitely far from the best supercruiser DPM, and far from the best cruiser DPM. Now, other than that, her guns aren't really that remarkable. In fact, her other armament, the HE, is quite bad. Her HE ammo is pretty lethargic in terms of its damage. It only does 3,600 maximum HE damage. And keep in mind, that's if she gets a Citadel with her HE, which you may get on like an Austin or Smolensk. And other than that, it's just kind of bad. Now, her chance of causing a fire is 27%, which is pretty decent with a 17.6 second reload time. So you'll be setting quite a few fires, and I find that I actually set quite a few fires in the Agir. A lot of times more so than I do in a proper fire starter like the Smolensk, which is kind of funny. But that HE Alpha is just so bad. But unfortunately for her, you have to use HE quite a bit in the Agir. Why? Because she doesn't have any improved AP pin angles, like the Alaska, the American Tier 9 cruiser, the Kronstadt or the Stalingrad with their, of course, Soviet bias AP. And unlike the other supercruisers like the Yoshi or the Azuma, she doesn't get good HE to back her up. So, yeah, you're stuck firing this pretty lethargic HE a lot, which is, because sure, you might get a pretty good game where you'll be setting fires left, right, and center. You'll be okay in terms of damage, but then you'll be getting the game where RNG gives you the middle finger, and you won't be setting any fires at all. In a lot of cases, and you'll probably see this in the replay you're watching right now, I just keep firing AP at bow-in targets as long as their superstructure isn't saturated, because you'll still be chunking them for like 7 or 8k if you can get your shells to go through their superstructure. With the dispersion of the Agir, that's not a tall order. But once that superstructure gets saturated, now you're stuck with 305mm guns with bow-in targets that you can't overmatch, of course. Again, unless you're running some really light cruisers. Besides her guns, she does get torpedoes. She gets the standard German torpedoes, and in true German torpedo fashion, they can, well, not that they can, they will break the very second you need them. 6 kilometer range, 13,700 maximum torpedo damage, 65 knots. You know, again, pretty much standard German torps, and they reload in 90 seconds. She does get the ASW airstrike, so that's very nice. AA, as far as the AA on the Agir, it's okay. Has an A rating of 84, but for tier 9, that's just kind of that down the middle line, kind of. I'll say this, I've never had trouble shooting down planes in the Agir. Like, it doesn't struggle to shoot down planes, but it's not ever been a plane blender like some other ships, of course. Maneuverability, the ship's pretty quick, 35.2 top speed, not top speed with the speed flag equipped. A turning circle radius of 880 meters, which is big. I mean, it's a big cruiser. A 14-second rudder shift time. So, not great maneuverability, but not terrible either. Concealment, you can get down to 11.9 with a concealment module and a concealment skill, so that's nice. It's a really stealthy supercruiser, so that's used to its advantage quite a bit, because with 11.9 kilometer detection range, you can pretty much control when you do and don't want to be detected, so that is very nice. For her consumables, she gets hydroacoustic search, which is standard for German, 6 kilometer range. It runs for 132 seconds. And then you get the repair party as well. Nothing special here, pretty standard repair. And also to the hydro reload to 114 seconds. Now, the Agir. What do I mean when I say she was murdered? Well, during testing, and this is a pretty... the Agir and the Siegfried, there's some of the most interesting dev cycles to look at, because so often during testing, they kept flip-flopping the ships back and forth. At one point in testing, Siegfried was a secondary ship, then it was Agir, then back to the Siegfried, then it was the Agir, then they removed 2 secondaries from the Siegfried, and then they made the Siegfried the secondary ship. So, yeah, it's weird. So, the Siegfried is just the Agir, but it has 6 15-inch guns. But it's got Supercruiser dispersion and high sigma, so the Siegfried has, I'm pretty sure, the most accurate 15-inch guns in the game, because Siegfried. So it's a pretty good long-range sniper, but it can also brawl too. But then they gave that ship the secondary, the good secondaries back before the commander rework, so you could get the Siegfried secondaries out to 11.9 kilometers, which is the same as your detection range, to where you could just be this absolutely secondary machine, and I loved it. So the Agir, which, her 305mm guns, they're not inaccurate by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not exactly the most accurate out of the other supercruisers. So it's more attuned to being a close-in ship, but she doesn't get the good secondaries that the Siegfried got. Huh. And then Wargaming came back around and shot the ship while it's already dead with the commander rework. Now where you cannot build into fire prevention, which means that you get that full battleship burn time without being able to reduce it outside of the module and the flag. So you have a 40-second something burn time on this ship, which sucks big time. Now, its armor, just like everything German, is great at close range. It's got a 27mm bow, which means it can tell 15-inch ships to go and take a hike. Its side plating is 90mm, so when properly angled, you can just go and laugh at most battleships. And it does have a turtleback citadel, but the turtleback isn't incredibly well sloped either. It's kind of shallow, but against cruisers and even some smaller caliber battleships, you're decently well protected. But if something with really big guns gets your broadside, you are going to fill it. Oh, I forgot to mention too, her broadside is 190mm. Now, she doesn't get any type of icebreaker bow or anything like that, so her nose, while it can laugh at 15-inch, it, of course, is defeated by anything above that. So, yeah, it's pretty chunky. I mean, again, that's pretty par for the course for most German ships. If you've played a lot of German battleships, you know what to expect here. At range, you get chunked. You show any amount of broadside, you get chunked. But unlike with German battleships that have good enough citadel protection, you can get blapped in the Agir and the Siegfried too against larger caliber guns. But because of the old commander skill system, you could build into survivability and be a pretty darn tanky ship. But when that changed, of course, like I just said, the burn times are now those full battleship burn times, and your health's going to be burning away quite regularly. It's not a small ship, and with the amount of HE spam in the game right now, you will be on fire quite a lot. So that's not aged very well with the Agir, her survivability, that is. Her guns, on the other hand, they're still okay. The AP is still really, really good. If anything shows you broadside, you're going to easily chunk them for 12 to 15k if you don't outright delete most light cruisers when they show you their broadside. And again, with a 17.6 second reload time, it's not terrible, but when you take that module, you have an 18.5 kilometer maximum range. And if you don't take the reload module and you opt to take the range module, because hey, you know, this is a tier 9 cruiser, it is going to be seeing a lot of higher tier games, and at higher tier games you really do need to be able to reach out and hit targets as far away as you possibly can. You can get a 21.5 kilometer range on the ship, but now you have a 20-second reload time. Not the worst trade-off ever, but with the way that the Agir is kind of set up to be played, it's mostly meant to be a close-in ship, so I would like the 17.6 second reload time. Now, that also throws it back to the HE. With a 17.6 second reload time, with that 27% chance of causing a fire, again, you can set quite a few fires, but taking that 20-second reload time, that's going to cut your fire starting chances quite a bit. And then, of course, too, you're stuck with this very anemic HE with the 20-second reload time now. And like I said before, the AP doesn't have any special pin angles or anything like that. So ships that's slightly armored to you, that are just pretty moderately armored because they are only 305s, you're going to bounce. So now you're stuck back to firing this anemic HE with a 20-second reload time, which is why I run the reload module on here. And her detectability does kind of help out there. Again, just being able to dictate when you do and don't want to be spotted is really nice. And plus with that range too, if you know something's inside of your detection range, you have a radar ship nearby, there's a very good chance they are going to be spotted if that radar ship pops its radar. So overall, the Agir, how is it today? Well, I'd rate this ship, when it first came out, I said it was a pretty solid ship. But nothing really too spectacular, and I believe I said I'd rather the Siegfried over it, and that's still very much true today, especially with the Siegfried's 15-inch guns. It's quite hilarious to, you know, blap a battleship with 15-inch guns from a cruiser and watch the confusion on their face. But with the Agir, it's gone from being an okay ship, in my book, to kind of, I'd rather play something else. And just trying to get this footage for you guys too, it wasn't a very joyous occasion. Now, there were a couple of moments, like the match you're watching right now, where things did line up and the ship was able to perform, but with the meta, again at higher tier, being pretty far back, and it could just be my build too, of course, you know, 18.5 kilometer range, that's not great for tier 9, and sure, I could run the range mod, but then again, you got that anemic HE that you're going to be forced to fire a lot, and I just don't see it doing too well either way. If its HE was a little bit better, if that HE alpha was, you know, more up to snuff, not saying it has to have some crazy, you know, British heavy cruiser levels of HE alpha, but just 3600, like that's, that's pretty bad. And sure, you could take the heavy HE skill that would increase that damage by about 10%, but then now there goes your great range, because that's a 15% debuff to your range at that point. So the ship's just on a very good spot right now, I think, with the commander rework and just the higher tier meta. It is a free XP ship though, so it is potentially a free tier 9 premium ship. And tier 9 premium ships are very highly profitable because you're constantly matched against tier 10 ships, so you get that boost for doing damage to ships that are that are a tier higher than you, and plus you've got the premium economy and the premium camo on there as well. And in the right situation, it could be an okay damage farmer, but there's just better options for you out there right now at tier 9. and even at tier 8 too, especially again with that HE. The HE is really a sticking point for me, because again, you're forced to fire it so much and it's not that great. I know I've said it like 3 or 4 times, but that is the main issue of this ship right now in the current meta. Now, they did say that they were going to look at returning secondary skills to cruisers, and with the commander rework, their secondaries are at a longer range now than they were before the rework kicked in, but of course they aren't anywhere near as accurate as they need to be. They're at 8.8 kilometers right now. I think I do have the secondary flag on here as well, and they are the 128s that can pin 32 millimeters of armor. So if Wargaming does come back and return secondary skills to these cruisers and they don't nerf the range, we might see a redemption arc for the Agir here. But right now, my opinion on this ship is, pass on it. If you get it in a container or something, good, great. It's a good little close-in fighting ship, but sadly, you just don't really ever get to use it too much. I'm not saying it's a bad ship right now. I'm not saying it's trash or garbage or anything. It's just, unfortunately, not in a good place right now. I would very much like this ship to get some love from Wargaming so it can be great again, but right now, it's just a pass for me right now, guys. I wouldn't spend any money on it, and I wouldn't spend any free XP on it right now either. But that's my 2 cents about the Agir. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. One way to 30,000 subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Again, hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.